The boardroom smelled like heated carbon fiber and espresso, two scents that, in my world, meant the same thing: money. On the center pedestal sat the prototype, an engine manifold printed in carbon fiber reinforced polymer. 12 hours ago, it had been a CAD file on my workstation. Now it sat under glass like something surgical. A piece of machinery that could cut engine weight by 19% and increase airflow efficiency by 12. The clients across the table understood the math. Performance brands always did. "Gentlemen," I said, rotating the model, "traditional casting creates stress fractures along the intake channels. This eliminates them." One of the executives leaned forward. "How much lighter?" "19%, I replied, "which converts into faster acceleration and lower fuel consumption." Numbers, design. Precision. My work is forensic accounting for machines. Every gram has a cost. Every decision is either debt or profit in the engineering ledger. My phone buzzed against the conference table. Unknown number, local area code. I ignored it. In high-stakes meetings, interruptions are contaminants in a cleanroom. The second call came exactly 12 minutes later. Same number. That persistence created an entry in the mental ledger of concern. "Excuse me," I said, and stepped into the hallway. "Elias Parker." A calm female voice answered. "Mr. Parker, this is Rebecca Chun from Mountain Vista Bank's Fraud Prevention Department." Fraud prevention. 3 words that rearrange a day. "We need to discuss a refinance application on a property listed under your name." My workshop. The industrial garage I bought 6 years ago. The building where every prototype I've designed was born. "I didn't apply for any refinance," I said. A brief silence. Then, "That's what we suspected." Her tone was professional, measured, the voice of someone who has already audited the evidence. "The application was filed 3 weeks ago," she continued. "Cash out refinance, $500,000. 500,000. $500,000 extracted from property I owned free and clear." My mind ran numbers automatically. Loans require signatures. Signatures require consent. Consent requires me. "I never authorized that," I said. "We're aware," Rebecca replied. Another pause. Then the line item that rewrote the ledger. "The documents were signed by Robert Parker, Linda Parker, and your brother, Julian Parker." My parents, and Julian. Her next sentence landed with the quiet finality of an audit report. "They appear to have forged your signature." The fraud office looked less like a bank and more like a lab for human error. Fluorescent light, steel desk, a scanner humming in the corner. Rebecca placed 2 documents side by side. "Let's start with the signature." On the left, the refinance application. On the right, my original purchase documents. My real signature stared back at me, familiar as muscle memory. Every engineer leaves fingerprints in their work, habits you can't fake. My signature had them too. "Notice the capital P," Rebecca said. I leaned closer. "The microloop," she nodded. My P curves inward before completing the vertical stroke, a loop no larger than a grain of rice. Not decoration, mechanics. "And here," she said, tapping the end of the name. A tiny mark. The hidden dot. Most people assume it's accidental pressure. It is. It's how I end engineering lines, a stabilizing stop, a final period. The refinance signature had neither. The P was stiff. Straight, dead, a photocopy of handwriting without the living hand behind it. "This signature isn't yours," Rebecca said. I nodded. "No. It's an imitation. And a poor one, the difference between a working design and a counterfeit. Every engineer keeps records, design logs, material tests, failure reports. Evidence of what worked and what collapsed under stress. But there's another ledger no software tracks, a private audit of emotional debt. Staring at the forged signature, I realized the ledger had been building for 12 years. I just hadn't opened the file. Until now. 12 years ago, I converted a condemned machine garage into my first lab. Rusted doors, cracked concrete, a roof that leaked. I invested everything: printers, CNC tools, raw material. My father toured it once, laughed, and said, "Cute hobby." Cost, my work dismissed as childish experimentation. Status, unpaid. 7 years ago, Julian called from detox. Insurance wouldn't cover the full program. I wired $38,000. No contract, no repayment plan. My parents later described it as something Elias could afford. Cost, compassion treated as obligation. Status, unpaid. 3 years after I opened the shop, my parents borrowed it for Julian's birthday, after the fact. I arrived to open the doors and found 50 strangers drinking beside equipment worth more than most houses. A beer sat on my industrial printer. Cost, my workplace treated like a rental hall. Status, unpaid. 2 years later, I scheduled my first serious investor presentation. The same week, balloons appeared taped to my fabrication tables. Julian had thrown a housewarming party. Except the house wasn't his. Cost, professional credibility contaminated by family entitlement. Status, unpaid. At Christmas, my mother asked loudly, "When will Elias get a real job?" I was 31. 2 manufacturers were licensing my designs. In their system, success only counted if it had a logo they respected. Cost, achievement reduced to temporary employment. Status, unpaid. Last year, Julian announced he would flip houses. My father asked if he could use my tools, cutting equipment, fabrication gear, printers. Within 2 months, half my inventory vanished. Julian sold it to cover old debts. No apology. Cost, theft rebranded as family support. Status, unpaid. A forged refinance application for $500,000 against the building that funded my entire life. My workshop, the place they mocked, borrowed, and used without permission. They didn't ask. They signed my name like I was a utility account. Cost, final proof that, to them, I wasn't a person. I was collateral. Status, unpaid. 7 entries, 12 years. Accounts like this don't close themselves. Eventually, someone performs the audit. And when the audit begins, every unpaid debt becomes visible. Fraud is never clean. It leaves debris, people in the blast radius who didn't know they were standing near the fault line. Rebecca slid another file toward me. This is the loan officer who processed the application. Ethan Morales, 24 years old, fresh lending license, first corporate job. The kind of face that still believed professionalism protects you. Junior loan officer, Rebecca said. 8 months with the bank. Ethan had followed the surface checklist: income verification, valuation, loan-to-value ratio. The math was clean. The variable he miscalculated was human nature. They told him you were traveling, Rebecca said. Said you gave them power of attorney. Nice old couple, concerned parents, just helping their busy son. Ethan believed the story. In financial systems, belief is a dangerous substitute for verification. The moment the fraud unit confirmed the forged signature, the bank's internal audit triggered automatically. Every file Ethan touched in 8 months was flagged, every loan re-examined, every decision reviewed by compliance officers and by federal regulators. He's lost his lending license, Rebecca said quietly. Without it, Ethan would never work in banking again. A career ended not because he was corrupt, but because he trusted the wrong people. My parents hadn't only forged my name. They de-detonated a federal review inside an institution. The cost of their cruise wasn't $500,000 anymore. It was $500,000 plus a young man's future, plus a bank's audit trail that would ripple through hundreds of accounts. Collateral liability, losses that appear after the transaction closes. The ledger always finds them. Investigations move like forensic audits, slow, methodical, emotionless. Rebecca called every Friday. Her voice carried the calm tone of someone reading numbers that ruin lives. 6 weeks to unwind a fraud that took my family less than 20 minutes to commit. The power of attorney document was notarized. It made the application look legitimate, until verification revealed the notary's license had been suspended 3 years earlier for document fraud. A contaminated witness. The moment the notary collapsed, every attached document lost credibility. Status, forgery confirmed. Fraud rarely appears alone. Rebecca's team searched linked transactions and found 2 more refinance attempts. both tied to property owned by my cousin Marcus. The signatures matched the dead copy on my file. Marcus had filed a complaint the year before, then dropped it when my parents repaid a small deposit. I understood the tactic: pay a little to avoid a ledger entry. Status: repeat liability. Banks operate across state lines. Money moves across state lines. When fraudulent funds are wired across borders, the crime becomes federal. The FBI has opened a file, Rebecca told me. Wire fraud. Bank fraud, identity theft, statutes with no patience for family excuses. Status: federal investigation active. Ethan had already lost his job. My mother tried to adjust the ledger anyway. She tracked Ethan to a car dealership and asked him to clarify his notes. His manager reported it. In legal terms, it was witness tampering. Status: obstruction added. My father hired an attorney. The attorney reviewed signature analysis and surveillance footage from the signing desk. His conclusion arrived as one sentence: they should accept whatever plea is offered. Status: defense collapse. The U.S. Attorney's Office entered the case. Robert Parker, Linda Parker. Julian Parker: conspiracy to commit bank fraud, forgery, wire fraud, identity theft. Rebecca's last line that Friday was simple: you'll need a victim impact statement. The ledger had moved from investigation to judgment. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and disinfectant. Neutral territory, the kind designed to keep emotion contained and liability documented. Robert and Linda sat across from me. Age had begun its quiet audit on their faces. Julian sat beside them, eyes down. The attorney cleared his throat. Your parents requested this meeting to resolve the misunderstanding before things escalate further. Misunderstanding. An interesting word for $500,000. My mother leaned forward, practicing softness. Elias were family. The phrase hung in the air like a line item meant to cancel a balance sheet. My father added, you have so much, the workshop. Clients, success, why not share? Julian finally spoke. It was just a loan, we were going to pay it back. The cruise was already booked. The house, he stopped, as if silence could make the word house less incriminating. I listened. Engineers learn that silence is a diagnostic tool. People reveal the most when no one interrupts. They kept talking: family obligation, exaggeration, how the bank must be mistaken. Each sentence tried to erase a crime with emotional accounting. When they finally stopped, they waited for my response. I opened the folder I brought, removed one document, folded once, official letterhead. I slid it across the table. My father unfolded it slowly. Federal Bureau of Investigation. A subpoena. Silence filled the room like cold air. My mother's face drained. Julian leaned back as if distance reduced liability. I stood, still without speaking. Because sometimes the most precise response is no response at all. Your Honor, my name is Elias Parker. I am 35 years old. I am a luxury automotive designer and a 3D printing engineer. The property in this case is not simply real estate. It is my workshop, the place where I built my company, my designs, and my future. 6 years ago, I purchased that industrial garage with my own money. No inheritance, no family investment, no safety net. Since then, I have spent more than 10,000 hours inside that building. 10,000 hours designing components. 10,000 hours calibrating printers that run through the night. 10,000 hours refining machines whose precision decides whether a car performs flawlessly or fails at speed. That workshop is labor, risk, and the record of my life. When my parents and brother forged my signature to obtain a $500,000 cash-out refinance against that property, they did not only attempt to steal money. They attempted to liquidate my existence. Because the workshop is not merely collateral, it is the physical proof of my work, where prototypes were born, where failures were corrected, where thousands of decisions became a business. Forging my signature was the equivalent of walking into a laboratory and trying to sell the equipment while the scientist is still standing inside the room. They treated my life's work like a dormant account waiting to be accessed. And they did it for a luxury European cruise and for a new house for my brother, Julian. This was not desperation. They had stability. They had resources. This was entitlement, the belief that what I built was theirs to consume. Their fraud also destroyed the career of Ethan Morales, a 24-year-old junior loan officer who trusted their story. He lost his lending license and his future in banking. He was not a criminal. He was collateral damage. Fraud spreads like compound interest. One forged signature multiplied into harm affecting an institution and a person who did nothing wrong except believe a polite narrative. Your Honor, I am not requesting accountability because I want revenge. I am requesting it because the facts demand it. My parents believed my success existed for their use. They believed my signature belonged to them. They believed they could convert my life into liquidity without consequences. But signatures matter. Contracts matter. The law exists for moments when someone decides another person can be treated as a financial instrument. I respectfully request a sentence that reflects the seriousness of this crime. They did not only try to steal money, they tried to liquidate my existence. Thank you. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a voice that carried authority without volume. She reviewed the file slowly, documents, signature comparisons, bank records, surveillance. I have seen fraud driven by addiction, desperation, and collapse, she said. This case involves none of those factors. She held up the refinance application. You forged your son's signature to fund a luxury vacation and a real estate purchase. Her gaze included Julian like a receipt includes every line. My ruling is as follows. Each defendant is sentenced to 24 months in federal prison. You will pay $120,000 in restitution to Mountain Vista Bank for investigative and regulatory damages. And this court issues a 5-year no-contact order. You will not contact Mr. Elias Parker directly or indirectly unless he initiates that contact. She set the file down. Court is adjourned. The ledger balanced itself without mercy. 2 years later, my workshop sounded like a controlled storm, printers humming, compressors breathing. The steady rhythm of a system that finally belongs only to me. On the central platform sat the largest object I had ever printed. My first full car chassis. Not a bracket, not a single panel. A structural skeleton engineered in carbon fiber lattice, 600 hours of printing, thousands of layers fused into one continuous design. I ran my hand along it. Warm, solid, real. Orders were stacked on my desk. A boutique hypercar maker in Italy, a motorsport team in Dubai, a startup in California asking for lightweight suspension arms. The invoices were clean, paid on time, and addressed to my company, not to the family, not to a last name, not to an entitlement. The shop had new locks, new cameras, and one rule written in my own handwriting on the whiteboard. Verify everything, even blood. A notification blinked on my phone, mail at the workshop PO box. Inside was a letter in neat handwriting. Ethan Morales. He wrote that he couldn't return to banking, but he rebuilt his life in manufacturing compliance, auditing documents, verifying claims, doing the work that would have stopped my parents before they started. It turns out losing my bank job forced me to become sharper, he wrote. Different career. Same lesson, at the bottom one line. Thank you for telling the FBI I wasn't the criminal. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer beside my deeds and contracts, the papers that prove what is mine. Outside the window, the afternoon sun struck the chassis and turned it into polished armor. For the first time in years, the workshop felt like freedom, not risk. That evening, I signed a new licensing deal. The signature flowed the way it always had. Microloop, hidden dot. Only the meaning had changed. A signature is more than ink. It is ownership made visible, a boundary you can't argue with. Once, someone tried to use mine like a spare key. They learned the final rule. My life is not an account others can withdraw from. The account is closed. The signature is mine. I am untouchable.